trying to drive a technology roadmap that prepares us for the deprecation of cookies. And so my responsibilities include our new CDP platform, Epsilon People Cloud, LiveRamp Safe Haven from an identity resolution standpoint, and also kind of I'm also responsible for the DMP, but DMP is essentially being kind of phased out by these new platforms and new things that we're doing. So really anything that involves our how we use consumer data in marketing, primarily in the paid space, but also supporting some owned media channels as well. There's other teams that kind of take that ball and run with it. But as far as really like understanding identity, understanding how we're going to use our first party data as effectively as possible and then scale that to prospecting new consumers is where I'm focused right now.
Great. Now being in the CPG space, that puts you, it's a unique space when you talk about consumer data and identity and first party data. Maybe talk a little bit about that in terms of how you view things from a CPG industry perspective.
Yeah, I am someone, this is actually my first role in CPG, and I came from retail. So I was with a large supermarket company for the past 5 years. And I think my boss will tell you that I may have gotten the job by saying, I'm tired of having it easy. I want it harder. I want to solve the CPG data puzzle. And so, what's funny is since I've gotten here, I've realized that there's actually this evolution that's happening right now, where as CPGs, we're able to use data a lot more like retailers use it. And so that experience has really benefited me getting started here. It is, with identity resolution and clean room technology and the ability or in the willingness of retailers and other data aggregators to give us more transaction level, people level data. We're really undergoing a major evolution in the way that we look at targeting, measurement, the consumer relationship longitudinally over time. Some of the things that Daniel was talking about towards the end there, that really thinking less about point in time success and more about consumer lifetime value is something that, coming from the retail world, very familiar with that concept, but harder to do for CPGs for so long, but getting actually easier because of some of these transitions that are going on. So it's a really exciting time to be in this industry, and somebody that I respect very much once said to me that great leaders don't persist the present, they invent the future. And so that's really what we're doing right now. And so I couldn't be more excited to be working on the things I'm working on.
That's great, and there's a lot to cover there. And what you said, I mean, all different aspects about partnering with retailers and your tech stack and lifetime value. But the first thing is, you mentioned about wanting to jump in to do something hard, and the first thing I thought about was, because we look at things like how do you talk to different consumer communities and kind of meet them where they are from a messaging perspective. And the first thing I think about when I think about your role is just the sheer breadth of different products, right, that Kimberly-Clark produces, right? From things we all use every day to things that are very personal in nature and carry significant brand loyalty and things like that. So maybe talk a little bit about that, because that has to be an amazingly complex part of what you do.
It certainly is, and I think it has there's additional complexity as well when you start to think about targeting, because we have some brands that are very much niche brands. We have or there's a very short-term life diapers, great example of you're only going to use those for a certain period of time. Some of our adult care products are only for a certain segment of the population, yet we also sell toilet paper and Kleenex. And so that is, obviously everybody is a potential target. And so it creates a lot of interesting challenges for us to think about how we're going to use data at the enterprise level, and trying to align around like common set of metrics, common set of way of thinking. Sometimes it can be a little bit challenging, and sometimes it's not a one size fits all approach that we need to take. But it's going to have a huge impact on us when we think about things like flocks. A flock is probably going to work really well. I'm going to say federated learning of cohorts. If you're listening to this, you probably know what a flock is, but in case people don't, I think flocks could work very well for those more niche products. And I think that how do I get a flock of toilet paper users? Like I'm really interested to see, as we get to start to test those capabilities, how useful are they to us versus the transaction data that we could potentially license that could show, here's the Cottonelle buyers, here's the Scott buyers, here's the Charmin buyers. And what does it take for me to turn someone from Charmin to one of our brands? I mean, that is, for some people, that's a very it's a big challenge. It certainly was a challenge in my household when I went to work for Kimberly-Clark to say we're changing toilet paper brands. So I mean, those things, like, and so understanding the cost of that, understand how that we move people through that journey is different in those different brands. And like some things we have time, and some things we have to be quick, and we have to be in that moment of receptivity, that potential brand adoption moment. How do we get there? Particularly as some of that targeting maybe gets more challenging in the future.
Now, I imagine.
I do want to say too, sorry, Mark.
That's okay.
One of the because you did make a point about the kind of products that we sell, and I think that when it comes to Kimberly-Clark, we're all about personal care. Like that's what we sell, and kind of in line with that, we're really, really concerned with consumer privacy as well. Everything that I'm working on now is focused on privacy by design. Like we want to have close relationships with our consumers. We want to be there for them in the moment, but we also want to know as little as we can. If I can do something that's purely ID based, and I don't know your name, and I don't have any of your PII, that's better for me. I'm totally happy to do that. I know we are, as a company, committed to that, and very, not to make this a pitch for our privacy policy, but we have a very robust privacy policy that just launched. It's really cool, and the way we presented it is a way that consumers can understand how we're using data. And so we think that cookies going away is a good thing, is going to help us with that mission to continue to care for our customers in a way that our consumers in a way that that they will appreciate.
I mean, I think, I'll just go back even to Sai's original slide when he opened the session today, right? It's about all of this third-party cookies going away. All of this is just wrapped up in really the trust issue, right? I mean, it's all about, whether or not the ROI of third-party cookies was already going down or not. Consumers were driving to this point where they want to work with companies at a different level, right? It's personalized, but to get there, you have to build the trust first. And when you look at the spirit of the laws around privacy, it's about the same thing, right? It's about giving consumers the power and having everyone operate in the context of trust. And I think privacy by design, to that extent, that's where everyone's going to be eventually, right? Because we're going to have to be, and it's a smart place to be. Yeah. Now, when you talked about the different brands and getting people to switch, I imagine your partnerships with your with your retail partners and strategies with your retail partners must be a critical component of that, obviously. So maybe you could talk a little bit about, how has this shift impacted Kimberly-Clark's relationships with your retail partners? How closely do you work with them? And maybe just talk a little bit about that.
So I think that this is something that's going to continue to grow. I think that there's a lot of potential opportunity around data collaboration that didn't exist before. It certainly exists now. It's something that I feel like we're working our way into. We want to make sure that we understand what's the right approach for Kimberly-Clark. So I'd say we're intentionally not going slow, but going carefully into those type of relationships to make sure that we can get the value that we're looking for, protect those relationships with those retail customers, and also continually learn from it. I think that when I mentioned before that there's this evolution of thinking maybe less like CPGs have thought in the past to the way that retailers think, there's also a big change management component to everything that we're doing. I think it's actually in some ways more important than the tech, these changes that are happening. We're in a really good place as far as the technology that we have in place. It's a matter of teaching our brand marketers, teaching our shopper marketers how to implement things with partners that can show real value, can show an incrementality that again, coming back to that idea of lifetime value, doing things that are effective over time. It's critical that we have this relationship with the retailers because they understand what's happening at the register, and we don't have that same level of insight without those collaboration opportunities. So identity resolution makes that safer, and not just from a consumer standpoint, but also from the company's standpoint of controlling the data that they share and making sure that they're getting value out of the data that they have. And we're certainly excited about doing more of that than we've done in the past. I think we've even with data partners that we've worked with for many years, we're going to be seeing another level of transparency where we're not just buying a segment from NCS IRI quotient. I could go on, don't want to single anybody out, but there's a certain level of trust that has to be there where we're saying we want to target these types of people, but they are building those segments, versus now we're talking to those same vendors about opportunities that how can we get raw data, put our analytics team on it, and develop our own intellectual property around analytics that is leveraging that partner data. So that's a big unlock. I think I'm kind of jumping to the thing that I'm most excited about, which is really that evolution that we're going to have as an organization, where we have these partnerships and we create something that's unique to Kimberly-Clark and is completely transparent as to how we built it, and then how we end up measuring it is just game changing.
Well, that's a really interesting and compelling point, which is, if I'm hearing it right, is, if you combine identity marketing approach with, privacy by design, and identity marketing has as one of its tenets, trust and all the information given by a consumer is done, with full disclosure and hey, I'm giving you this information because I as a consumer, I want to build a partnership with you, Kimberly-Clark, and understand, your products more and how I can use them. So it sounds like when you combine kind of the tenets of identity marketing and privacy by design with strong partnership with your partners and a robust technology stack, what that really creates when you bring it all together is competitive advantage, right? I mean, it sets you apart, right?
It really, I think it does. I think that I do think that we're not going to be the only people in our space that are doing the things that we're talking about today, obviously. But I do think it gives us an opportunity to, particularly as a CPG that is very focused on, we do have a wide variety of products, but not maybe as wide as some of the other larger CPGs out there. And so I think we're going to get really good at understanding how to use the data to drive the results that we're looking to drive. And we have the resources to do that, and we have the will in the organization as well. I think that's one of the most exciting things about working at Kimberly-Clark is there's genuine excitement from the C-suite and sector presidents, regional presidents about how are we going to use data to transform our business. And so that is, and we're unlocking a lot of that. And so just the excitement of some people that we're out here talking about this is exciting for people at Kimberly-Clark, that we're going to be innovators in this space, and no pun intended with the Brand Innovators Summit, I guess, but it just kind of happened. But no, it's we certainly think we're going to have a competitive advantage over time, and we're doing a lot of things to make sure that we bring in the best talent and empower that talent to dream big and execute exciting new ideas. So.
Well, and I agree. There'll be other companies doing it as well, but I think that we've all seen, I won't name specific companies, but we're seeing in different technology industry areas in particular, that there are companies that are saying, we're going to lead on these issues of transparency and privacy and things like that, and we're going to do it to create differentiation and a competitive advantage. And I think that's really smart. So how about shifting gears back to kind of the business model a little bit? How about direct to consumer? Is there a DTC kind of strategy also within Kimberly-Clark? So we talked about the retail partner strategy, which is, I assume, going to continue to be critical, obviously. But how about on the DTC side? What's going on there?
I probably am not the best person to speak on that, to be honest with you. I do know that we are doing things. I do know that in some of our global markets, we're actually a little bit more mature in that area than we are in North America at this time. And some of that just has to do with the realities of the regions. But there are teams and efforts going into that work, and we're going to continue to push on that. And I do think that part of that retail collaboration also includes collaboration with a company like Amazon. So we are looking for more ways to directly reach out to our consumers and get our products to them. I'm definitely not the expert in all of everything that's going on, other than to say everything I hear gets me excited. I think we're headed in the right direction.
Great. I see that there's a question that's just come in. So let me try to read it here. So you've spoken a lot about post-transaction metrics from a data perspective. How do you envision working with publishers, perhaps deterministically, to fuel your first-party data and lifetime value potential upfront in paid partnerships? And what's the currency? Is it CPM, CPL that you're envisioning?
So I think it's an interesting question. I think that I will kind of start with what I already talked about and clarify. It is the big unlock for us is the transaction data that's available in these clean room type. LiveRamp, Safe Haven's our primary partner there, but we are doing a lot of other enrichment of our consumer data as well. We've partnered with Epsilon as our primary data provider. They're also our CDP provider that is unifying our consumer records, and we're enriching them with their third-party data. And then the other piece of that is then how do we end up connecting to those contextual opportunities with publishers that are potentially there for us. I think that in a lot of cases there's really I'm on a project right now where we're talking a lot about adjacencies to our products, or like moments where people are receptive to these products. And so I do think there's a lot of potential publisher partnerships out there. Me being more on the tech side, I wouldn't be bold enough to say this is exactly how we're going to negotiate those deals, but I do know that we are still very much involved with publishers and looking to do deals where we can put our products in the right context and turn it into I think one of the interesting, when you talk about identity in particular, authentication becomes very important. And so there's three reasons I think that people authenticate. They authenticate for content, they authenticate for value, and they authenticate for convenience. And so if we can play any role in helping publishers get more authentication, I think that we're always looking for those collaboration opportunities, because it helps us grow our first party database. Some of the things that we sell, it's not necessarily like an easy thing to get people to sign up for. And so we've done a lot of partnerships already where co-promotions where we work together with companies to help us grow our first party data set. But I think it can also be mutually beneficial with publishers, and that we can provide some of that value to encourage people to authenticate and identify with the publisher as well. So I am also on the publisher side. The thing I'm most happy about with Google delaying its decision about when to deprecate is like we were ready for it. We're fine. I'm happy for the publishers. I think that the publishers are the key to a vital and valuable internet, and we need to do a better job as an industry making sure that they are properly rewarded for the work that they do. And so I was very concerned mostly for them about cookie deprecation before there was a good solution in place. But I think that there's, if you have great content, I continue to believe that authentication is something you should be pushing for with your consumers. We just have to make it easier. We have to figure out a way to make it feel like second nature to people to say, hey, this is me.
Yeah.
This is what I'm looking for. This is what I'm about. But I don't want to give you all my personal information. I just want to have an ID. Like we have to figure out a better way as an industry to make consumers comfortable with that, because they want the great content. They want the personalized content. They just don't want to have to make it be either a pain or some way an invasion of their privacy. And I don't think it has to be. I think there's a lot of good proposals out there that people are working on that I know we as a company would support. So.
And no, I agree. I mean, I think it's also the era that we're coming out of, right? Where people are very reluctant, maybe even in some cases, unnecessarily so, but perception is reality, and people fear giving too much of their information. But I think that could shift just as easily, right? As more companies start to show that it's not something to be afraid of, that it really does put the consumer in control, right? Because I as a consumer get to decide if I want to trade that authenticity for that authentication for something of value. And I define what value is.
I certainly don't want to use this time to get on a rant about one of the richest companies in the world, but I think that when you look at what Apple is doing, I feel like they're hitting a nail with a sledgehammer. And at times, like I don't know that, particularly the things that they've announced with iOS 15, like why are you turning off my ability as a marketer to understand if someone opened an email? I actually use that to make sure that I'm not annoying them. So now you're going to take away my ability to understand if yeah, someone signed up maybe to get a coupon code and then they never want to hear from me again. We have processes in place to make sure that we eventually stop talking to that person. And you know, and are having a lot of really good discussions about how we even purge those records as quickly as possible to where it makes, as it makes sense.
Right.
So like, I think we have to do, again, a good job as an industry, like understand like consumers, not all companies are out to do harm. I don't think we're out to do harm in any way. And what is the best way to give consumers the experience that they want, but still make them feel protected? And I think maybe running ads that make it seem like everything that they click on leads to people following them around everywhere is like maybe a little bit much. And I think that the tactic, some of the changes they've made are a little bit much and maybe not as well thought out as they should be. But I don't know if Apple cares what I think or if they're listening.
So, okay, let me take a moment again to, we've had some great questions come through. Let me take a moment to just remind everybody to please continue, drop questions. We have about 10 more minutes or so. So we'd love to get more questions from the audience. So please drop them in the Q&A thread on the bottom of your screen. So in the meantime, Mike, you've talked about the technology stack, in different places. Maybe could you go into that a little bit more for us in terms of what does it look like there at Kimberly-Clark, to whatever level you're comfortable sharing, but kind of how do you view the whole stack? We talked to, I think it was Shiv earlier who mentioned, one of the things they always want to do is to make sure that what they're doing from a technology perspective is to enable action-oriented kind of decisioning, not necessarily get stuck into over analysis or trying to make things perfect. So I just love to hear more about what does your stack look like? What are the critical components? How do you leverage it there at Kimberly-Clark?
Yeah, I heard Shiv talk about that, and I wanted to applaud because I do think that, and particularly when you start talking about identity marketing and trying to get one-to-one all the time. So we've built our stack to maximize our one-to-one opportunities as much as we can where it makes sense. But we also know that cohorts of people are a reality that we're going to be dealing with. And the sense that eventually we'll evolve to being pure one-to-one all the time with consumers and be able to talk to them on an individual level is actually probably, it's a vision that I think a lot of software companies have sold through and people believe in, but the reality is that it doesn't necessarily, it's not 100% necessary. I think Daniel was talking about this too. What I caught of his is that, there are statistically sound methods that have been around for a very long time, like randomized control trials, that can tell us if our marketing is effective, if we're hitting the right people and seeing and having success. So we have built our stack around the idea that any data that we have, we want to unify to an individual record or household record, an ID. And then we want to but we understand that that data is ultimately going to get fragmented as it goes out into the world, particularly as more and more walled garden type, there's obviously the big walled gardens, but every retail clean room is potentially another walled garden that you're dealing with, where you're not going to be able to get everything back that you put in. And so there's this data decentralization or data fragmentation that's going to happen. So as much as we've tried, and our partners at Epsilon have been a great partner as far as putting a consumer data warehouse in place that is best in class. And we really wanted to start with a solid data foundation that was, I want to say it, I'm struggling with exactly how to say it, but it is like an IT first solution versus a marketing activation first solution when it comes to a CDP. I think sometimes CDPs get sold in without a good data foundation in the background. There's only so much they can do. And so we felt very strongly about making sure that we had the right tech in place and that we could build the orchestration tools on top of it as we go. So that's what we've done. And then we've partnered with LiveRamp, as I mentioned, as our primary tool for activating in the pseudonymized space. So, working, whether it's onboarding into Facebook or DV360 or Trade Desk, we have that common space, and now we've added Safe Haven where we can leverage their advanced analytics capabilities that run on the back of GCP to do advanced data science and to see impression logs coming back in from the Trade Desk and to work with, as we mentioned, as I've talked probably ad nauseum about at this point, with retail partners that or data aggregators that can provide us with transaction data so we can truly understand the full consumer journey. But it is, there obviously we're avoiding any re-identification issues. We're working in those spaces to do analytics in the most safe way possible, and I think we're going to see that. We're in our first year with both of those platforms. I've been lucky enough to be the product owner of those implementations, and now I'm a product owner of a backlog of a lot of really cool ideas that we're going to be working on. And those things will take time, and we're working with great partners on the agency side as well that are helping us get more out of that stack. So I don't know if that was as specific as people would want it, but that's basically how we're approaching it. Yeah.
I think it ties back to, a term you used earlier that maybe not everybody who watches this has come across, certainly most have, but the whole idea of privacy by design, right? And so, whether it's a marketing campaign or an IT architecture, right? It's making sure right out of the get-go that privacy is a critical component that's built in right from the start.
Yeah, for sure.
So clearly you're exercising that, or you're following those guidelines.
We are, and I think that I'm really excited to see where this tech takes us from a measurement standpoint, and like truly, I use the word pseudonymized. I know that it's one of those words that once you learn how to pronounce it, you want to use it as much as humanly possible because you're proud of yourself. But being able to have those identifier only spaces to do measurement it's such a huge sense of relief that in a way that I certainly have to worry about in my job making sure that we're not doing anything that's exposing PII, but I also know that a lot of what we're doing, I don't even have to worry about that because it's kind of taken care of. And so we've cut it down to there's essentially 2 people in the company that have administrative access to PII, and at least on the platforms that I work on. And so that's but we have dozens of people that have access to the data that has then been stripped of that. They can run reports. They can dig deep and develop their own insights without any worry about security in that sense. But
sure.
Of course, we're always worried about security. But we've designed it to make it as safe as possible.
Well, it's another one of those things that a little bit of work up front to design it that way saves an awful lot of work to try to put a bunch of safeguards and controls in after the fact. So.
Yeah. I don't even have access to the PII.
Last couple of minutes here, Mike, is there anything we didn't touch on that you think is important, particularly for this, context or topic? We've covered a lot. We've covered, your partnerships with retailers, your tech stack, privacy, competitive differentiation, but love to hear anything else you have, whether it's, where you think maybe things will be another year or 2 from now. Will Google continue to push back that timeline? I think right now it's end of 2023 is what they pushed it back to, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I actually don't think it's going to get pushed back anymore personally. I think that one good thing about them starting the clock when they did is that people started to really interrogate cookies. And I think that's a good thing. I think that it's a technology that has served its purpose, but it's a time has also passed as well. I mean, anyone who's worked in like the DMP space before knows that, you've got issues with, one person using 8 different devices or browsers, and home versus work versus mobile. Right. I mean, and numbers are always, with cookies, I think it's inherently unreliable in some ways. And I think that while we'll certainly be using probabilistic techniques for measurement and understanding of cohorts that have been de-identified, but there's also a certain deterministic aspect to solutions like, say, like the Trade Desk's UID 2.0 or the ATS solution from LiveRamp that gives us a lot more reliability, that maybe doesn't initially give us the scale that we're used to, but was that scale really there in the first place? I think that you can definitely question that. And so I actually think this is going to continue. If I'm thinking about the future, I think the interesting thing about what we're doing in the identity space is, I think about this. I thought about this weekend, because somehow I got a brand new credit card, and then like within 3 weeks, someone's using that card to buy some Facebook games or something, and I had to get a new card. And it's like, we are so bad in general at identity beyond just the marketing space. Like, what is going to be the thing that replaces the social security number? What is, I know that there's already been talk about legislation related to that. Like, I think we have a bit of a, almost identity crisis. I hate saying that, it's a bad joke, but in general, it is protecting people's privacy. Everybody should be working on it as hard as we're working on it in this space. And I think that, changing the way we do identifiers is something that is necessary. And I hope that we get consumer sentiment behind that to say, I want to be authenticated in a way that makes me feel safe, not just safe in our relationship, but safe that no one else is going to pretend to be me. And I think that is the reliability of data and the reliability of identifiers and the security of those is something that I'm interested to see where the world goes. I feel like there's a big opportunity there that somebody's going to solve and probably get very rich off of. But I think that is, that's the next thing.
Yeah, great. Well, that is a fantastic note to end it on, and perfect timing. I see Ryan jumping back on there. I just double check the. There was one last minute question that came in. Any thoughts on CTV?
Oh, well, we could probably do another 20 minutes on CTV at least, but CTV, obviously, to me, CTV is an extension of what we're talking about. I mean, it is already a cookieless technology. There are certainly challenges around knowing who's watching a particular TV set, but connected TV is just going to continue to grow. We're trying, the way we think about it when we're talking to some of our vendors about solutions around connected TV, we think it's going to fit very neat and nicely. It's going to just become another channel that we use. Right. Excited about more opportunities there, particularly as all companies like ours that have spent a lot of money traditionally on terrestrial TV. The potential for efficiencies with CTV are super exciting.
Right. Sounds like you're right. Sounds like a idea for a whole nother session we can do. So great, Ryan. I don't know if you want to wrap it up, but Mike, let me just say thank you so much. It's been a pleasure chatting with you again. Thank you for your time today, and thank you. behalf of SheerID to everybody who participated today. And Ryan, I don't know if you'll be wrapping up, but happy to turn it back to you.
Gentlemen, thank you for being here with us today, and definitely worth a future conversation around CTV. I know that we do have some things in the works that are coming up around that, so be sure to take a look at our website, as we do have some roundtables and other sessions that will be around that topic. But for Mark and Mike and for everyone else who has been here today, thank you very much for taking the time to be here. You could have been a lot of places in the world, but you were here today with us, and wanted to say thank you to you both.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Awesome. And for our listeners back home as well, we want to just make sure that we are going to continue to deliver content throughout the rest of the summer. Things are only heating up here, pun intended. It is hot here in New York, New Jersey, and in the Northeast, and I'm sure it's hot all over the country, but we want to keep delivering you that amazing content. So please, if you're free tomorrow, Thursday, July 1st, we have Marketing for Gen Z. We've got that summit kicking off at 12 Eastern. We're going to have marketing leaders from Burger King, JanSport, and a lot of other great organizations. But seriously, to our listeners, thank you so much for being here today. We hope to see you again real soon, face to face for sure. But until then, we'll see you on the virtual settings. Thanks.